Hiya David, great to hear from you again, and good to see that the swing's moving in the right direction. Regards your comments about the pull, when I look at the swing, I don't see a lot of pull characteristics per se from the swing itself. I see a lot more sort of maybe push, overdraw traits. That's during the swinging of the club. I do, however, see a few things at setup that could, all things being equal, produce a little bit of a pull. See, the shoulder alignment is a fraction open in relation to the alignment of the feet. So sort of shoulders just a fraction open. You could alleviate that quite quickly by focusing on pressure point 5, which is the right arm. So in your case, the underside of the right arm squeezed against the torso. If you squeeze that a little bit, this right shoulder will drop back and should help you with your alignments. And alignments issue is a tricky one to police because you never really, well, other than on video, you never get to sort of view things from down the line, obviously. And it doesn't look massively out, but that right shoulder does look a little bit sort of, push forward, and I would just want to pull it back by applying a little bit more pressure to that underside of the right arm. So that would be number one change for me in regards to the pull shot that you're describing. The second change would be I would want to push the pelvis towards the target, maybe an inch or two. That will create a little bit more axis tilt at setup. So rather than the upper centre and lower centre being aligned on top of one another, you would have a separation. The lower centre would move forward slightly, creating a little bit of axis tilt. Not a great deal, just a little bit. Just maybe anywhere up to maybe sort of 10 degrees, 12 degrees. That's done by pushing the hips or the pelvis forward, not by dropping the head back. That hip slide is something that is tricky to achieve during the downswing anyway. The longer the club and the nearer the ball gets to the centre of the arc, so you've got your ball position pretty much bang on that 0 point, the harder it is to keep the club coming from the inside during the downswing. So the minute the hips stop sliding, or the minute the linear movement stops, the club starts to come across the ball a little bit more. So pushing the hips forward at P1 just helps to add a little bit of linear movement that can encourage the hands or the club to stay in behind the hands as it comes into delivery position P6. So, pelvis forward will be one change, again, to help deliver the club from a slightly different angle. And then the next little tweak is I'm just going to get rid of a couple of those lines. I would push the handle forward as well. And again, I wouldn't go overboard with that. I'd just push it forward a little bit. And I would also lift the handle a little bit. So if you think in terms of the checkpoint from the book, you would want the handle to be sort of as a baseline on the belt buckle. If you were trying to hit a draw, you'd have it maybe an inch above it. And I would just raise the handle a fraction. And I would push it forward a fraction. So, a few changes at setup: handle up, handle forward, pelvis forward, and also just considering these sort of pressure points beneath that right arm, underside of the right arm against the chest. They will be the setup changes relative to the pull shot that you described in your email. In regards to the swing itself, obviously it's been a while since I've seen the action, so just sort of point a couple of things out that I think you should be working on that they're not directly pull pieces. One or two of them are, but there's a lot of push characteristics in there as well. So just trying to tidy it up, really, make things a little bit more predictable for you. I see a player whose arms work out and whose club rolls behind him. So from pretty good setup position, like I say, just raise the handle a fraction. The hands should trace the lower line until about P2, as should the club, and you can see that the hands elevate a little bit too fast. and then the club gets rolled behind the hands. And again, it's pretty typical of what we see on a daily basis. Players who lift the hands too soon, start side bending this sort of right wrist a little bit too excessively, which then pushes the club in behind the hands. So looking there, we could get the hands in a little bit more, P1 to P2. I want to see them about here on that elbow, on that hand plane line. So look for things like when you're videoing the swing, look to try and get the left arm on a very similar angle to your inclination by the time you get to P2. You could actually match it up, it wouldn't do you any harm. But certainly hands in P1 to P2 would be a really big point of focus. When you do that, you'll find that the positioning of the elbows changes. So rather than the elbows being relatively level, with quite a lot of side bending going on the wrists, what you'll start to see is that as the left arm comes in more, I'll do that in a different colour. As the left arm or the hands come in more, you'll see that the right elbow comes back a little bit. The wrist won't side bend as much, and the right elbow will be higher than the left elbow. That'll also help with your shoulder tilts. It'll make it look like your left shoulder's working down a little bit more at P2. And that will then allow you to sort of work the club upwards in a slightly more appropriate manner. One of the things that's sort of typical of your swing is that left arm bending at the top. It's sort of a lot to do with where you are at P2 and the way you get the club to the top. So from where you are down the line at P2, as that right elbow starts to come behind you, starts to retract a little bit too quick as you try and add some inward to the backswing. Now you've got to start lifting the club a little bit. The elbows have divided and there's your bent left arm at the top. So hands in a little bit more, P1 to P2. The changes at setup where you feel that the underside of the right arm is pinned against the chest a little bit more will help reduce this gap here between the arms and the torso, which will help dramatically with your consistency. When I look at the swing from down the line and face on, I think, what the torso's doing here and what the lower body's doing is fantastic. I just think you need to get your arms under control and working a little bit more in sympathy with your body rather than doing their own thing. They look like they're working very independently. On the way back, elbow pops up, club gets pushed across the line, left arm bends, etc., etc. So it's a tidying up process as much as anything. So pelvis forward at P1, handle up, handle forward, just an inch or so at P1. A little bit more pressure on the underside of the right arm at P1 as well. Those changes should make it a lot easier for you to then get your hands working in P1 to P2. Checkpoint being left arm much closer to the body. A look of hands in and club out, which I can explain to you via email if you need to, but I think you get that anyway. And then obviously, like I say, it's been a while, I don't get a chance to get you on the mat, so I want to give you as much info as I can here and give you things to work on. The next piece to consider is the right knee and what that does in the downswing. Now, we're setting up, because of the work we've done prior on straightening the right leg, you set up with your right leg a little bit straighter than your left, so it looks like the knees are out of position. If this knee was flexed as per the model, the knees would be pretty level. So if we put a line sort of where the right knee, for want of a better expression, would be or should be at P1, yours isn't going to be because you're straightening the right leg off. I haven't got a problem with that, but you get the idea. So what should happen now is during the downswing, the right knee should return to its address flex. So it should move into that line and then start to extend. And your right knee over flexes. The right heel comes up off the ground too fast. And this is why during the downswing you see that sort of the head come in out the box, away from the wall, hips tucking under, etc. And you get this idea that you sort of, you're losing your inclination to the ground a little bit. This in turn uncocks the wrist too fast, which will then in turn increase the rate of closure on the club face. So again, that could, I'm not saying it does every time, but it could start to create a ball that is going left. I won't catalogue it as a pull exactly. I don't see a massive amount of pull characteristics in your swing, like I said before, but I do see things that would certainly make the ball go left. So policing what this right knee is doing is very important. And what I suggest you do for that is at setup, it's great that you're on grass there as well if you can use this mat. Get an alignment rod or alignment cane, stick it in the ground on an angle and angle it just in front of, I'm going to put another one here for you. Stick it in the ground and angle it just in front of the right knee. Maybe about, because of the setup that you have, I would say about 3 to 4 inches in front of the right knee. And then the goal now is during the swing to make a swing without making contact with that cane. So you're trying to prevent the right knee from overflexing, which will allow you to maintain your inclination for longer, which should start to control the rate of closure on the club face. So a few things to work on. Try and work in there gradually. Don't try and do everything at once. But just a little bit of food for thought in regards to shots that curve left. A few pull characteristics, like I say, at setup, maybe in the takeaway, but certainly in the downswing, it sort of looks more sort of push and overdraw than it does pull. That's certainly no over the top move. So again, just to recap, P1, pelvis forward an inch or so, handle forward an inch or so, handle up a little bit more pressure on the underside of the right arm. P1 to P2, get the hands tracing an inward path more. At P4, try and maintain the pressure that you've established on the underside of the right arm at P1, all the way to the top of the backswing. That'll start to really tidy the arms up for you. And then during the downswing, just spend some time controlling that right knee so that it doesn't overflex. Hips start leveling out too fast. Inclination's lost. Wrists uncocked too fast. And as a result, club face closure is far too high. So a little bit of work on controlling the right knee. Great to get some footage off you once again. It's been a while, obviously. Sorry for the delay. I've just had a really manic period. I just sat at home then with the family and just realised that I hadn't done it, so I thought I'd better throw it together for you straight away and get it across to you. If you've got any questions about what I've just covered, feel free to drop me a line. Good luck with it in the future and keep in touch. Keep me posted on your progress. Thanks very much.